Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's ContainerJournal.com program, brought to you by Techstrong and Fairwinds. My name is Cody J. Brown. I'm the host of Techstrong Learning, and we have an exciting panel ahead. First, I've got just a couple of housekeeping notes to cover. Today's session is being recorded, so if you miss any of our discussion, maybe you'd like to rewatch or share with a friend. The on-demand recording will be made available shortly after we conclude our live session today. If you have any questions, we want you to send those in to us using the Q&A tab, which can be found on the right side of your screen. And that is also where you'll find the chat tab. We want you to use the chat tab for more general conversation. Let us know your thoughts throughout today's program, maybe where you're tuning in or what position you are in your company. And we do have 2 polls that we'll be launching throughout today's program, so we do really want your participation there. And as always, we are giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards, so be sure to stick around for the duration of our conversation today. So our topic is 5 disagreements you should be having about Kubernetes and how to solve them. And I'm joined by Bill Lettingham, CEO at Fairwinds, Kendall Miller, Technology Evangelist at Fairwinds, Elisa Hebert, Vice President of Engineering Operations at Fairwinds, and Andy Suderman, CTO at Fairwinds as well. So to everyone on our panel, thank you so much for joining us. Kendall, you want to just take it from here?
I will dive right in. Thank you, Cody. Hey, everybody, and welcome. This is 5 disagreements you should be having about Kubernetes and how to solve them. We will be role-playing some of these disagreements for you, taking different sides, arguing back and forth, and sharing some personal experience about times where we've seen things like this happen. So it's going to be very tongue-in-cheek. There will be a lot of sarcasm. Please do not take any of the sarcastic things that, well, at least any of the sarcastic things that I suggest as, best practices. If you have any question reading between the lines, it should be pretty obvious, but feel free to ask. We will be taking questions as we go. There's a Q&A tab, as mentioned. There's also the chat tab. We try to monitor both of those. We'll have time for Q&A at the end. But if you have questions as we go, please feel free to drop them in there. And I get a little red dot, so I should notice. And we'll try to answer them in a timely way if they make sense right then, or we'll save them for the end. With that, let's dive in. So welcome. 5 disagreements you should be having about Kubernetes and how to solve them. We'll start with intros. Cody gave a high level, but Bill, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Kendall. I'm Bill Lettingham. I'm the CEO of Fairwinds. Prior to Fairwinds, I was a CTO for 15 years. So hopefully I'll be able to share a little bit of that perspective as well.
All right. And I'm Kendall Miller, tech evangelist at Fairwinds. I have lost a little bit of hair off my face here. Probably need to update that picture. I have been at Fairwinds for 7.5 years, coming up on, I don't know. It's been a long time, very long time. I'm focused on Kubernetes for a long, long time. So been in the kube space, hearing about all the Kubernetes things and interacting with clients over Kubernetes for a lot of years. So excited to be here. Elisa?
I'm Elisa Hebert, VP of Engineering Operations here at Fairwinds. So I oversee the software and services teams. Before Fairwinds, been here for about 2 years. I did enterprise cloud consulting. So I'm excited to participate in the argument today.
All right. And Andy, dive in.
I'm Andy. I'm the CTO here. I've been working in Kubernetes for about 7-ish years. I've been at this company for 4.5. I have also lost a little hair off my face since I took that picture, if you can't tell. Just not quite as much as Kendall. And I'm always excited to argue with these folks here. Lots of great conversations to be had.
Yeah, there's some amount of we're just doing our day jobs in with a camera on this time, where a lot of our life actually, usually not arguing over these topics, hopefully. But anyhow, let's talk about Fairwinds real quick. So the reason we're here talking to you about this is we are a Kubernetes company. We've been in the Kubernetes space for a long time, talking about security, policy, and governance. Fairwinds builds software to help people make a transition to Kubernetes or to adopt Kubernetes at scale and implement guardrails and security and cost management. We've been in the Kubernetes space from very, very early on in the Kubernetes world and the Kubernetes ecosystem, and we've seen all the problems that everybody has all along the way. So today it's our goal to help organizations ship faster, and we do that with software as well as services around Kubernetes. So that's why we're here today to talk about that. And we're going to show you our software a little bit towards the end of this and some of the things that we're going to be covering today. But first, we're going to get started with a polling question. And we're going to ask, where are you in your Kubernetes journey? We'd like to know if folks are just learning about containers in Kubernetes, planning to use it in the next 6 to 12 months, only using it in testing in a development environment, or using it in production. And Andy, I'll do the low tones and you do the harmony on the Jeopardy theme. You ready?
No, Stevie's
Sound
not
like a
there.
harmony? Come on!
No. I was going to say I answered A. I don't know about you all.
You're learning about containers
Yeah,
in Kubernetes, even though you've
just-
also been using it in production for years and years?
No, just learning.
Just learning. Okay, so yeah, the vast majority of people are using it in production. That probably matches where we're going to be talking about things today. So we're going to be covering some high-level discussions around Kubernetes and some of the disagreements you should be having and how to solve them. So let's go ahead and dive in now. And I will close this poll. And here we go. Number one. We brought our CEO onto this call so that we could talk about this with Bill here, in both with him and also in front of him as he participates and doesn't. But you should be giving your CEO access to your Kubernetes environment. And I mean, Bill, you're the CEO. We should be giving you all the access, right?
Yeah, well, thank you for buttering me up first, Kendall. Obviously, you should be giving me access. I mean, everyone
That's
should
right.
have access to Kubernetes. It's such a great environment, and so yeah, of course I should have access, right?
It's such a great environment. Oh my gosh, that is the best comment about that. Yes, Kubernetes is such an incredible environment. It's almost like sitting by the pool on vacation. What a great environment. Why wouldn't I want access? I'm glad you don't actually feel this way, but
No, certainly. Hopefully, people took my response as tongue in cheek. Frankly, CEOs should be nowhere close to Kubernetes, and it could be argued that even CTOs should not have access either. Probably a bigger question is around developers and what level of access should they have or do they need in terms of interacting with Kubernetes. I mean, the panacea or the ideal notion is that developers can just put their applications into containers and then ship them off to Kubernetes and their job is done. But I think the reality that we've seen is a far cry from that. And developers do need some guidance around how to interact with Kubernetes. So that's just kind of my initial thoughts on this subject. And back to you. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think on the one hand, if you have a one-person organization, if you are self-employed and you are a Kubernetes consultant, you probably should, as the CEO, have access to your Kubernetes environment. In almost every other situation, it's probably a bad idea. But I think what's funny about it is, first of all, there's a very public new CEO at a new company who's just throwing his weight around and making decisions everywhere, sort of haphazardly. And I won't name the company Twitter, but there's all kinds of ways to do this that are maybe messy or less messy. And there's just no reason. You don't have to, as the CEO, have your hands in every little bit of the infrastructure. You don't have to have access to Kubernetes. But I will ask, and Andy, I'm kind of curious your take on this, like, he's the CEO. It's still his, so half the time it's his credit card, same Amazon account he uses to buy t-shirts on Amazon. And here we have our AWS account tied to it. Like, if he can buy t-shirts with it, why shouldn't he have access to the Kubernetes clusters?
I mean, first of all, thank goodness we have a CFO and a corporate card, and it's not the case that Bill's buying his t-shirts from our
He
AWS
might be buying
account.
t-shirts with that card. I don't know. I have a number of Fairwinds t-shirts. I'm just saying.
Probably not his personal account, though.
All right, fair.
But as the person responsible for security and compliance here, I mean, principle of least privilege applies. He doesn't need access to it. I don't know that I would ever give you, Kendall, access to a Kubernetes cluster that I loved and cared about. And I think Bill's right. I agree. Even many CTOs shouldn't. I'm very much looking forward to the day when my access gets revoked by someone else, because I don't need it day to day necessarily. But developers definitely, the more developers understand about the environment that they're deploying into and how it works, the better they're going to do writing their code to deploy into that environment. And the more stable it's going to be, the more you can start to incorporate security and other things into your development process and shift those left, because they're going to understand how that impacts the other end of it where it's actually running. It's the dream of the DevOps movement, right? So
that's exactly right. Well, and in theory, though, you can have tooling in place in a perfect world. To Bill's point, that probably doesn't exist. All of your tools have access to the Kubernetes environment, and the people never need them. But that's a little bit of a stretch. So, okay, well, good. I think we should move on to the second one. Anybody, Elisa? I didn't call on you specifically. Anything to add before I move on?
I should definitely have access to everything. I just want to make sure that that's clear to all of you.
If for nothing else, you want to have an itemized list of all the things you have access to, so that when someone new comes on board, you can show them how much shorter their list is.
Absolutely.
To show how much more important you are, right? Like at the very least.
And I can just haphazardly give access to the things as we hire. Anybody in the organization should have access.
Well, and along those lines, if you buy a new piece of software, Lisa, you're going to immediately turn around and put it in Kubernetes, right? I mean, isn't the very first thing you do anytime, if it's a new HR solution, if it's a new ticket tracking solution, you just go, hey, software team, we're going to run this in Kube, right? Everything.
Yes, and I don't tell Andy about it so that I can avoid having to worry about SOC 2 compliance.
That's exactly right. So speaking of it here, I mean, Andy, like, why we've got all these pretty databases. Data. I have no idea what the plural of databases is. Probably databases.
The plural
but
of databases
databases
doesn't exist. It is already plural. Databases is the right word.
Databases. All of the fancy databases. We have all of these. Why not just put them all in Kubernetes? Like, we should put all of our services into Kube, right?
Definitely. It's really good at stateful workloads. It's so good at anything that's not, a multi-replica web server. We should run literally everything in it and never, ever use a pre-built out-of-the-box service that has, thousands of engineers backing it instead of R5. Definitely.
So, Bill, before Andy moves on, what do you say to a CTO that acts like that?
Maybe it's time to start looking for a new job, huh?
I mean, if your CTO has a hard and fast, everything goes in that same environment. Hey, we built Kube so we can put every single thing into it. You probably do need to raise some eyebrows and start to worry.
What happened to the concept of fit for purpose, Andy?
Oh, right. No. I should definitely clarify, though, because sarcasm doesn't always come across. I definitely agree with Bill here in that if I had that sort of hard and fast attitude towards our technology, I should be looking for a new job. Probably not as a CTO, but use the tools that are best for the job, fit for purpose. And the other thing that I like to tell folks is if it's not your core competency, if it's not the thing that makes your company money, you probably shouldn't be spending a lot of time running it and building it yourself, because that's just a distraction from the thing that you should be doing. So there are solutions out there to run your databases, to run your queues, to run your email service that are backed by big teams that know what they're doing, and you should be using those services because they work.
Because they work. Yeah, there's somebody smarter out there probably who knows what they're doing, has a purpose-built solution for it. There's a substantial difference between your MySQL running in your Kubernetes cluster and the way that Amazon's going to do it with RDS, because that's literally all they do. They're probably better at it. So if you decide to, as a religious rule, put everything into Kubernetes, bad things are probably going to happen. But there's only one way to find out. I know a lot of organizations that have a very strong, we only use what was built here philosophy, and it becomes religious and it becomes weird. And if you're Netflix size or Google size, you might get away with it, but it starts to be a problem.
Yeah, and at that point, you're probably solving problems where maybe you can build it in a way that works better for your, the thing that you're trying to build, and it might be appropriate to make that decision. But for the vast majority of companies, especially small to medium, that rarely makes sense.
Yeah. Any situations where we can put all of the square pegs into the one round hole?
I mean, if the square pegs are really small.
If they're really easy. Yeah, well, I mean,
it's all about perspective, right?
It's all about perspective. If you, I mean, to your point, if you are a really small company and you have 2 services and, no database or something, you might be able to deploy all of your services into your Kubernetes environment. If the square pegs are small enough, they might all fit in the round hole.
And if you're that small, I might argue you shouldn't use Kubernetes at all. But that's probably a different discussion for a different
But
day.
I just got back from KubeCon, and I'm building for RDD, resume-driven development, Andy. And come on. Okay. We'll go on to the next thing. So the third argument that you should be having. Developers should be in charge of everything all the way through to production. So that means when I onboard somebody new, I give them keys to the kingdom, and they own it all the way through to production, no matter what, all the time, because service ownership, right? And that is the best possible thing all the time. And in fact, I don't really want my operations team to get in the way at all, right? Or I don't know, stop me when you agree with me, Andy. What do you think of this one?
I mean, I want to hear someone else's perspective. I answered the last one first.
Okay. Well, Bill, what do you think of this one?
That's a good one to have a debate about. I mean, there's certainly advantages of having developers take ownership over their applications, workloads, services, etc. And really kind of, I think they're in the best position to know kind of how things need to be configured, how the code works, etc. But in order to make them effective, you definitely need to have some additional tools to help them through that process. Because as we all know, Kubernetes continues to be a very complex environment. And either it requires a ton of training in order to bring the developers up to speed on how to use it efficiently, or you need to augment your ability to kind of, give them access with tooling that helps them, put the right guardrails in place so that they're following best practices around how they're deploying, services into Kubernetes.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And I'm curious, I mean, related to this, like, most of these slides, even the title that's on the question for the disagreement is written in a sarcastic way. And this is like, honestly, if you're going to lean a direction of having the developers own everything all the way through. This one is written not to be sarcastic all the way through. Now, there's edge cases for this just as much as there is everywhere. And that's why this is in the disagreements list that you should be having, is because these aren't black and white things most of the time. Leaving your CEO out of access of the Kubernetes cluster is usually pretty black and white, I guess. But the part of the reason that's on the list is people struggle with that decision an awful lot more than they maybe should. But I'm curious along these lines, Elisa, when you go hire a developer, how much do you want them to be amazing at, say, Go code, and amazing as an SRE, and amazing as a Kubernetes engineer who understands every bit and piece, and amazing at the CI/CD, and amazing at observability, so that you can just plug them in and they're going to do absolutely everything wonderfully?
I mean, I believe really strongly in creating single points of failure. So I think that's a great idea to just hire one person to do everything. I think in all cases, understanding how what you do fits into the bigger picture and having accountability and ownership throughout its life cycle versus tossing things over the wall is the best posture. So I think here the definition of everything is the important piece.
The important piece. Yeah, I mean, I like to call it the Cheesecake Factory approach, right? Like you can be a burger stand and all you do is make one hamburger and you make the best hamburger around.
Are you about to say bad things about the Cheesecake Factory? Because I really like the Cheesecake Factory.
Well, wait for it. This is part of the discussion.
I'm just saying.
Or you can do the Cheesecake Factory where you can literally buy any culture's food and you can have it grilled or steamed or fried or rolled or whatever you want because they have everything. And so there's no way they do anything well, but there's always somebody who really likes all of the variety. Right, Elisa?
You can take anybody you want to Cheesecake Factory and they'll find something that they want to eat.
That's
Have we gotten off track there? Just a little
if
bit?
you hire an engineer that can do everything and own everything all the way through to production, you can give them any problem and they will do it reasonably, maybe sort of well.
Where are you finding these magical developers that know Kubernetes and observability and CI/CD and front end and back end and database?
There are people out there who have that, people sort of see as unicorns, and they become the sort of the blocker on your work in progress, right? They become the person who everybody goes to for everything. And they're the only one who knows how to solve problems because they get leaned on for all of their expertise across the board. So more elasticity in your organization is better in all ways.
Yeah. But you can also we push service ownership. Fairwind's big fan of service ownership. Our software, part of the way we sell it is this will enable service ownership. You can write guardrails for your engineers so that they can deploy and own their services all the way through to production. But part of that pitch is your engineers aren't going to know Kubernetes inside and out all the way through. So developers should be in charge of everything all the way through to production. And by everything, I mean the little bits that they can really understand, and others should be responsible for helping them be in charge of what they can all the way through to production in a reasonable and responsible way. That is my non-sarcastic wrap up of that idea. Anything to add before I move on to 4?
Yeah, well, just to extend that a little bit, I think, the concept that we really embrace is, engineers or developers are ultimately responsible for the applications they're deploying. And that includes not just, the code, the reliability of the code, but also things like security, cost efficiency, et cetera. And the notion is really to give them the tooling and the visibility and the information so that they can make better decisions during the development process, so that they can feel enabled to have, really service ownership, but you're supporting them with the appropriate information for them to make good decisions.
Yeah.
Enable and empower versus, obfuscate. I think I hear this a lot where customers say, well, I don't want my engineers to have to care about Kubernetes. And I think that's the wrong approach. You want to enable them to care about Kubernetes in a way that isn't just overwhelming and difficult and insecure and non-efficient. Like, give them the guardrails, but enable and empower them.
I think that's true across the board, right? You see the same parallels with engineers and the business being at odds. And the more you can teach your engineering team about how the business operates and why we make the decisions that we make, the more engaged they will be and the better decisions they will make in terms of what they're building.
I think this is the bumpers analogy at a bowling alley. Is you don't want to put a sheet down so that the kid can't see if they're hitting the pins or not. You want to put bumpers up so that they can see, am I hitting the gutter or not on my way to the pins, but better understand the process and get better and better at owning what they can as they go. And that's where you want to be enabling people. Give them guardrails, but don't hide the endpoint. Don't hide the goal. Don't hide success and failure so that they know how to improve upon it. Okay, we've beat that one to dog food, so let's move on to 4. Your CTO should retain access to SSH into individual containers. So I have, well, let me start with, who else is going to SSH in, right? I mean, the CTO needs to have.
At least said we were giving Elisa access to
Obviously.
everything. So
The VP of Engineering Operations needs to have access to SSH into individual containers, just so that we can ask her to screen record that, and then all laugh about it later.
It'll
and she
be
has
a
to figure
full
out which
party.
investment she's in. So talk about this, because this is a little bit of a strange trade-off, and I'm going to go to the CTO for this question too, Andy. SSH into individual containers, like yay, nay?
I love execing into containers and installing packages on the fly just to like test stuff out in prod and, you know, open up a bunch of security vulnerabilities and that kind of stuff. And I should definitely have the access to do that. I mean, if you take it away, what else will I do?
You've put all these guardrails in place to keep me from deploying known CVEs into my cluster. So I have to wait until it's running in the cluster and SSH in and then install it. Otherwise, what am I expected to do?
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
Exactly.
No,
Well,
in all
so-
seriousness, nobody should be able to exec into a container in prod. And I mean, really, immutable infrastructure is what we're going for here. And, you know, if you're writing really secure containers that are, you know, distroless or from scratch, and you aren't deploying, you know, bloated containers that have a bunch of stuff in them, and you have good tooling around your cluster for observability, you're shipping your logs somewhere, then there shouldn't be a need for that at all in general.
Well, and it's also, it's a different paradigm. So Kubernetes exists in a paradigm, in a world where it's not about keeping that one machine running and healthy forever and ever and ever. In Kubernetes, you can just log in, or you can just, with kube control, kill a pod, spin up another one. There's no reason to worry about each individual one. And in fact, that's part of the paradigm shift, is how much of our computer troubleshooting. Bill, you've been in tech for a very long time. How much of troubleshooting in tech is just turn it off and turn it back on again?
Unfortunately, way too much still.
A
When in doubt,
lot.
Right? Yeah. No,
Yeah.
so the beauty is with Kubernetes, it kind of does that automatically for you. And so you can avoid some of the manual, you know, reset, reboot, etc. But, you know, lest we digress.
100%. Yeah. Well, and so then here's a question that comes in that is quite relevant to this discussion. What are you suggesting that we do with applications that are older than 5 years old? DevOps teams cannot do maintenance without SSH access to the containers. So my first question is, if you have an application that's been running for 5 years and you need to be able to log in and keep things going, you probably don't want that running in Kubernetes anyhow. But correct me if I'm wrong there.
No, absolutely. I mean, that would be my first question, is why are you trying to run this in Kubernetes? Because Kubernetes works best when you are using it when you're assuming immutability and the ephemeral nature. So if you can't, you know, re-architect that application slightly to be able to run in an immutable container, or, you know, I have done things where you take a monolith and run it in a container, but you still have to treat that container as immutable and ephemeral and work around the problems that are introduced by your application, or re-architect the application. But if you can't do any of those things, then definitely I would highly not recommend running it in Kubernetes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think like we're back to there's a pattern, there's the anti-pattern, and then there's the question of, should the person at the top have access to break the rules? And there's situations where you need somebody to have access to break the rules. And if you're going to have that be somebody, maybe it's your C-level. It's not every organization where the CTO is the most technical person in the organization. A lot of times that's not the case. It depends on the size of the organization, et cetera. But Yeah. Gates was implemented as mandatory advice from a government association. Yeah, so there's other issues going on there, and in terms of, so I mean, like part of the reason we bring this up is like this is a complicated, messy topic. Are there situations where organizations are going to need to be able to SSH into containers? Yes, it sounds like you have one of the messier situations where that's the case, and kind of, I'm sorry, but that's why this is a discussion and disagreements you should be having. There's an awful lot of, in most situations, do X, but it's almost never in all situations.
Not almost ever. Never. No advice ever uniformly applies to every situation.
Well,
not the nature.
Sometimes that advice always applies. So you're
80% of the time, it works every time.
It works every time. That's exactly right. Okay, let's go on to, or Bill, were you going to say something?
No, I'm good on that one.
Okay. Looks like you were gearing up to add something. So let's go on to our last one here. You shouldn't worry about your cloud costs. It's cheaper than owning your own infrastructure, always. And Elisa, I'm going to start with you because I know you don't care about costs. And
I love the word always.
What's that?
I love the word always. I think that
I love that you love the word always.
Yeah, I love those black and white lines. I think unit cost is important. So if you are like really up and to the right and your revenue is, 100x every quarter, good for you, then maybe your cloud costs can soar right along with it. But in all scenarios, you should understand what the unit cost is of your footprint, your cloud spend, versus whatever the unit that makes sense. If it's a cluster, it's a customer, if it's revenue, if it's whatever that N is, it's important.
But we're running a shared multi-tenant environment. All of our customers use one environment. Is it actually possible to tell unit cost from that? Like, can we? Isn't that just like waving our hands in the air, pretending that we know what the unit cost is?
You could at least average it and see if it's getting wildly crazier over time so that you have some feeling for it. Hey, we know that our unit cost is increasing wildly over time. At the very least, you could do that.
I suppose.
You might not know the why, though. I mean, I might have asked Andy to answer this very question about our own infrastructure the other day. So. Oh.
That makes me happy because we probably wrote this slide before that happened, and then now here we are live and bringing up these things. And see, when people air out their dirty laundry
in public,
in a
that's
webinar,
the most fun. Yeah,
that is the most fun. That's definitely the most fun. And I think the interesting thing about cloud is that it has been sold to people as a couple different things. Number one, it's always the right decision, always. It's usually the right decision for the vast majority of people. It's not always the right decision, always. Number two, it's always going to be cheaper than owning your own hardware. It's usually cheaper than owning your own hardware in the vast majority of SaaS situations, but it's not always, always, always. And I have known a good friend of mine was in charge of a large, very fast growing organization where he was told repeatedly, don't worry about cloud costs. He kept saying, but it's getting crazy over here. And they said, don't worry about it. We're just scale. And then he was eventually fired for not managing the cloud costs. So that's a thing that can happen. And it does get completely out of control. It's almost like, it reminds me of when I was a kid and my parents are like, use cash, because when you use a credit card, you can't tell how much you're spending. It's almost like that. Like if you have to manage your own data center, you feel every time you install a new rack and you're scaling and scaling and scaling. The thing about the cloud is those dials go to 11 and you can just keep cranking them. And, one day you wake up and your bill's not $10,000 a month anymore. It's $1 million a month. So it gets a little crazy, but
yeah. No, I think the beauty of the cloud is it's very easy to spin up new workloads, but that also becomes the challenge in terms of how do you enforce that environment and, have some visibility as to what your engineers or developers are running in terms of workloads. Right. And, I've actually even had situations in the past where we had rogue workloads come into the environment where, somebody had hacked in and started up, a bit minor, and just having visibility to our cloud spend actually gave us visibility into some of the security issues in our environment as well, unfortunately.
And Kubernetes just exacerbates that problem because now, I have a cloud API, but now I have this Kubernetes API that's adding another obfuscation layer between the cost and what I'm deploying into it. And so it just gets even worse.
Yeah. And so I want to pause for a second and say somebody submitted something through the Q&A tab. I do see that question. If you have other questions, feel free to submit them there. I'm going to come back to it because we're already past that topic. But we will have time for Q&A at the end. So if you have questions, please feel free to continue submitting them. I do see them, and we're going to keep going. But what was I going to say about that? The Kubernetes obfuscation layer there. Like Andy used some fancy words to say So when I'm talking about these dials turning up, when you're installing racks, you feel that cost go up. And in the cloud, you can just add another instance. And with Kubernetes, you can set Kubernetes to just add more instances. And so it's really easy to have runaway costs. And a lot of organizations don't have any idea how to grasp what are they spending and how in Kubernetes because of that additional obfuscation layer. So, getting something that will actually show you what your Kubernetes clusters, workloads, namespaces, et cetera, are costing you is a significant deal. # this isn't just a sales pitch for Fairwinds Insights, but it is also that. We'll get into a little bit of how some of our software helps with that, but it is a big deal. You should worry about your cloud cost. I know it's hard. There is software that makes it easier to manage. Okay.
It also gives you a better story for your CFO, right? It's much easier to draw out your costs when you're building a static infrastructure, and it's a little bit more. You have to have a little bit more of a flexible mindset on the CFO side when you are moving to the cloud, and having more visibility into how that spend is happening definitely helps that conversation along.
Well, it's also, I know an awful lot of organizations, the joke is I can go into AWS and I can spin up an instance or I can spin up infrastructure that's going to cost our organization tens of thousands of dollars more per month. But if I want to buy a candy bar from the company vending machine, I need to get approval. There is just a wild disconnect in how cost in the cloud is thought about as it relates to the organization. So you should worry about your cloud cost. It's not always cheaper than owning your own infrastructure, so you can just ignore it. And even when it is cheaper than owning your own infrastructure, sometimes you still got to stay in control of it. But good. Those are the 5 disagreements. We've got another polling question, and then we're going to dive into a demo of our software, show you a little bit of what that looks like. We're going to do some Q&A, and then we have a gift card drawing at the end here. So stick around for a little bit longer. What is your greatest opportunity to improve your Kubernetes environment? Is that getting help with the basics, general best practices assessment, improving the security posture of your clusters, money, or improving the reliability of apps running in Kubernetes? And as folks fill that out, we will watch some of those results roll in.
I got to answer A again.
I got to answer A. Do you just try to answer A every time so that you
He's juking the stats.
Yeah.
Click a button. Don't think, just do.
Isn't that everything we've been saying, not like the opposite of for the last 30 minutes? Is think before you do?
It's questionable.
Nobody wants to save money.
0%. Improving the reliability of apps running in Kubernetes. Yeah, that's if you. Well, we'll get into. We've got a number of things to share. There is some open source that Fairwinds makes that plays in this space, and then our paid software also does. So. Great. Well, let's dive into a little bit about Fairwinds Insights. So Fairwinds Insights is Fairwinds commercial software. So this is Kubernetes governance. I think that's the first time I've made that mistake. From CI/CD through to production, we cover security, Reliability, improving the reliability of your apps was that top poll answer. So if you're looking at that, we do cover those things. We check for known vulnerabilities, and we also have some cost management. So I'm going to pull that up and show it to you in just a second here, but real quick, we give you lack of visibility into security and compliance risks, including the compliance bit, which, having that in one place for compliance reporting is significant. We have cost optimization. We say cost optimization because it's not always with Fairwinds Insights telling you how to cut every penny out of your infrastructure. We often save people a lot of money in their Kubernetes infrastructure, but there are times with certain workloads, if you tell us that the quality of service you require is very high, that we'll tell you to even spend more. So that to us is that optimization bit. And then policy and guardrails, we do enable service ownership by giving you those bumpers in that bowling alley so your developers can see the pins, see when they're knocking them down, see when they're missing, and improve, but also not fall into gutterball situations. So that's what Fairwinds Insights does. Whoop, we've got a white paper there I'll come back to, but let's dive in and I'm going to show you the platform. So real quick, when you log into Fairwinds Insights, you get an overview of your organization. In this organization, all the clusters that are running, we've got a bunch of prod and staging and et cetera. And including my favorite cluster, which is apparently offline. That's kind of sad, but that happens. And we give you an overall health score. So you can see everything that's going on here. The organization's got an A because it's tracking all these different clusters across the organization. I can click into one single cluster. And actually, I've already got that loaded up here. And you can see action items as they're introduced into the cluster above the line, as they're knocked out of the cluster below the line. So in theory, this cluster is improving over time. This cluster gets an A, and you can see all the different checks that we're running on the cluster. So this one's checking over 2,000 different individual checks. The vast majority of them are passing, but we do prioritize those: critical, high, low, medium, et cetera. The critical issues tend to be security related. But we do reliability, efficiency, as I mentioned. We track that health score over time. This cluster is not particularly interesting because it's a demo cluster, but you get the idea. And then we have some costs over time as well. So you can see that all from this overview. Now, where's this all coming from? We collect reports from a whole bunch of different open source software and operationalize it at scale. So if you have one Kubernetes cluster, and you want to go install a whole bunch of these tools, you can get a lot of the way there. However, if you have lots of Kubernetes clusters, it's very difficult to operationalize at scale, and make that very easy with Fairwinds Insights. And then we give you a bunch of proprietary information above and beyond that through the platform. But Polaris is our open source project for identifying common Kubernetes configuration issues. So those common misconfigurations. Everybody wants help configuring Kubernetes better. Polaris is our tool. It's a Fairwinds open source tool that does that. We also have Nova, which checks for Helm charts that are out of date, Pluto, checking for deprecated APIs. We support third-party software, so Trivy, container vulnerabilities, KubeBench, KubeHunter, KubeSec, and then we have support for the open policy agent. So you can write custom policy as well. So out of the box, Fairwinds Insights gives you a whole bunch of best practices, and we roll that all up into action items. You can write custom policy for just about anything. So this is across my whole organization. I'm going to go in and look at just that one cluster, and you can see the critical security issues here at the top, the high-level security issues. We can sort by efficiency, resource requests and limits should be set. An engineer can click on this. You don't have to be the most seasoned Kubernetes engineer in the world to click on this and understand what's going on, because we give you a description right here. This is what you should do. Here's how you go about it. The problem, remediation, and even an example in this particular case, so that you can knock these issues off over time and improve upon your Kubernetes cluster. But if you're like me and you're a platform engineer or an SRE engineer and you see this big list, you're going to be overwhelmed and think, I don't want a huge, long laundry list of all the things I'm doing wrong in my cluster. I want to make that, I want to put in place policy so that other people are improving things over time. And so that's where Fairwinds Insights shifts things left. So when you install Insights, it can sit in your CI pipeline. Here we're see GitHub Actions. Fairwinds Insights, we have an engineer pushing code through in a workflow that you're probably all familiar with. And then Fairwinds Insights is stopping that deployment from happening. And so it's telling us why. Hey, there's a whole bunch of severity medium and several severity high issues with this particular deployment, I can click on the full report. It'll load me into the GUI and show me what's broken and how to go about fixing it. And you can set the threshold for that. So say, for example, I want engineers to be able to deploy anything that's not severity high or higher. So that way there's a threshold. Hey, medium things I want to alert people on, but I'm not going to stop the deployment from going through. Go back in. We did touch on some cost metrics. So here we have cost by cluster. And we're showing the clusters all the way across the organization, which ones cost us the most, where and how, and the total build cost, the cost with our recommendations. In this particular case, we're suggesting that people spend a little bit more because of the quality of service that they're requesting. And we break that down across clusters here. You can sort by namespaces as well. And then we have actual breakdown across workloads. So here, you can see the relative total cost of each individual workload, the relative daily cost, that daily cost over time, and then you can select a quality of service, and we're going to give you a suggestion based on that. So let's see if I can find one here that's, it doesn't matter. I'll click into one of these, and it's going to show you, here's where your requests are currently, and this is where we suggest your requests and limits are. So in this particular case, we're actually suggesting you spend a little bit more money on this workload because you've set the quality of service to guaranteed, or critical would be the same kind of thing. We want to make sure that you're never going to have a problem running this workload. However, depending on that quality of service, depending on what we've been collecting in metrics in terms of actual usage, we can often, we have had a situation with a customer where we saved them a lot of money, even just in a proof of concept, more than enough to justify purchasing the software. And so that's a not uncommon thing. A few more things that I'll show you, and I'm not going to get into the entire platform, but we do have a vulnerability dashboard where we show you everything that's running with known vulnerabilities. We can scan repositories even before they enter into the cluster, show you which kind of issues there are, because we're scanning the code that's going to be deployed, and we can see misconfigured YAML or known issues that are being linked to it. We do have compliance dashboards, so you can report SOC 2, other compliance issues or other compliance standards, and you can set in there what you want to be checking for that, so that you can generate reports. You can compare clusters. You can write custom policy. This is our OPA support, and you can create a policy that does just about anything with OPA. And then finally, we also have very deep, complex automation for the engineers that want to go deep in that. So let's say every time a service is deployed into X namespace, I know that team Y is responsible for that. So I'm going to alert them in Jira, creating a ticket automatically, that kind of thing. But there's a whole bunch that can be done through our automation rules. That's Fairwinds Insights. There's, like I said, a whole bunch more here. If you're interested to learn more, talk to sales, reach out, connect with us. We're happy to dive in deeper. And we do have a white paper available here, Kubernetes, the good, the bad, and the misconfigured. So feel free to go take a look at that if you want to see some high-level Kubernetes configuration suggestions from the folks that have been doing it for a very long time at Fairwinds. Now, finally, let's get back to that question that came earlier. Going off of number 3, is there any reason when a non-developer manager or colleague should step in? So let's go back to number 3 here and see if I can find. Developers should be in charge of everything all the way through to production. Is there any time, maybe any situation when a non-developer manager or colleague should step in? So yeah, there's definitely situations where you don't want the developer to own everything all the way through, and somebody needs to step in. Bill, you want to give an example, or I can come up with an example?
No, go ahead if you have one off the top.
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of situations where, let's say somebody's, developers should be in charge of pushing everything through all the way through to production. If I know there's a bad actor who still has access to something, I don't want them to have access to it. And so I want a manager to step in, even if they're not super technical. If I know somebody's deploying something that we've asked them not to, or I know that team X has a weird priority and they're pushing code on a Friday afternoon that I'm afraid is going to break things. Like there's lots of different situations where you might want to step in and block things, but that's part of this is putting in place good policy, good standards so that you can trust your people to do things. By putting in place the right guardrails, you get to sleep at night instead of stress about everything else that your people are doing.
Yeah, no, I think in general, you should be, building your development pipeline such that, as developers push in code changes, they flow in an automated fashion, from pre-prod into production, but you have the necessary checks in place so that you're making sure that any code that is checked in is correct and is not going to break things. So your tests and automation should run as part of your pre-prod environment before any workloads are actually deployed into production. So you have some level of assurance there that everything is going to operate correctly once it lands in that production cluster.
Awesome. Yep. And agreed. And are there any other questions? We'll give it a second if anybody's got one last thing. It's okay. Okay, well, we have shown 5 disagreements that you should be having. You should be having lots of discussions. Very little of this is black and white. There is not always a right or wrong answer to almost anything, and definitely as it relates to your Kubernetes environment, no matter how hot this technology is, how widely adopted it is, how much everybody is picking up Kubernetes, it doesn't mean that everything in Kubernetes is always a great idea all of the time. And that was our presentation. Very pleased to have you here, Cody. I'm going to turn it back over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Kendall. And Elisa, Andy, Bill, thank you all so much for joining us as well. So I'm not going to just cut us off just yet. I will give our audience one more minute to send in any questions that they may have. But in the meantime, I'll remind everyone that this session was recorded. Following this panel, you'll receive an email with a link to access this recording on demand, or you can find it living on the Container Journal website at containerjournal.com/webinars. So onto those 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. Our winners are Haiti C, Todd B, Karen F, and Brendan C. So to our 4 winners, congratulations. Keep an eye on your email inbox to claim that gift card. But if you don't happen to see that email, please do check your spam folder. All right, and seeing no more questions, I'll just go ahead and thank our panel. Elisa, Andy, Kendall, Bill, thank you all so much for joining us today. I'd like to thank Fairwinds for sponsoring today's program. And to our audience who's been with us for the past 52 or so minutes, thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate your time, and we really appreciate your feedback as well. So as soon as we close out, you will have a survey that pops up on your screen. We'd really appreciate if you filled that out for us. Let us know what you'd like to see in future programs, or maybe what you liked about the one you just attended. Otherwise, we do hope to see everyone at an upcoming Techstrong Learning program.